Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. We are in the home stretch for this Grand Arena Championships. We only have 2 more matches to go, including this one, and I need to push for Kyber League. I can win both matches, and if I do, then I will absolutely get into Kyber. If I only win one, then I will get into Kyber if I do really well with my feats and other factors in the next round, such as full clearing my opponent. So there's a decent chance of me making it, but there's also a reasonable chance of not. And after I scrubbed out in my most recent match, my confidence is not at an all-time high. I'm not necessarily unconfident, but I am not going to go into this match thinking that I'm just going to win, and I usually try not to do that anyways, even if it looks like a pretty good advantage. And in this case, I don't necessarily have a great advantage. My opponent has a significant number of tier 7 relics and a bunch of other relics, way more than I have, a ton more. I do have the advantage in Zetas by a significant margin, by about 14. I have worse mods than they do though, and our other gear is actually, I have a slight advantage in gear. So kind of a strange match. I have more gear, but they have more relics. They have better speed mods. It's strange. My Darth Revan is slower than theirs, but my Bastila is faster. Actually, strike that, reverse it, totally opposite. And then I'm fairly sure that my Darth Malak is worse because I've put almost no effort into my Malak, so that's on me, and I don't really feel like it's something to apologize for, to be honest. Maybe I should, but I don't want to. So moving into this match, I of course want to get full clears, and my first couple zones were not really that intimidating, if I'm being frank. There's a classic bounty hunter squad with Bossk lead, Qi'ra without nest, Geonosians, and a low gear First Order team. Things that I was concerned about moving into this match were his Relic 7 General Grievous team, multi-relic Padme team, and there were some pretty strong Nightsisters, and I saw none of that. I was also concerned that my opponent would put Darth Revan in the back because that seems to be a thing lately, and they have the advantage with the Revan just by speed, and so I decided I needed to use the lowest level of squad that I could, and this match is a pretty no-brainer one, to be honest. Imperial troopers completely demolish the bounty hunter team as long as Stark is faster, and you need to make sure that Stark is faster than Bossk is usually the one that he needs to be faster than. If it's Bossk lead, you almost never have any problems, and if you have a light speed Stark like I do with 340 speed after the Veers lead, you really don't have to worry about the Jango lead either. So this was a pretty easy match. Just pick the lowest health guy, shoot him till he goes down, and you get a bunch of turn meter. Then you do it again, and you do it again, and you're weakening the entire squad the whole time you're doing that because you're using AoEs. Everyone has an AoE, and it's a pretty easy match if they don't have anything fancy or special in there, which my opponent did not put anything very surprising in there, so I was good to go. Seriously guys, if you don't have a well-geared, put together Imperial Trooper team, you are missing out. It is a great tool to have in Grand Arena. Moving into this match with First Order against Qi'ra, the thing you really want to look out for here is because there's only a couple resilient characters and you need to kill one of those right away, you really need to be watching your health and your protection, and there's not always something you can necessarily do about that, but if you can taunt as much as possible, that's going to be good, just to save First Order officer from getting his protection down. And the very first target you want to hit is Vander Chewie, and I know I've said that before, but it's just something that you need to keep in mind because Vander Chewie will revive the other guys on the team, and you absolutely don't want that. One other factor you really want to take into consideration here is L3. You want to avoid hitting her. You just want to stun her and leave her alone, and that means no AoEs or anything. And the reason for that is if you hit her, the second you hit her, she will dispel a debuff on one of her allies, and that's not necessarily great because sometimes you want to also have stuns or health immunity or whatever on some of these guys. And so even though it's tempting, you like using the Kylo Ren AoE for the turn meter train. I get it, that's really wise, I love that too, but it's something that is not going to actually serve you very well, because if you hit L3 with that AoE, she's going to dispel either someone else's debuff or she's going to dispel her own stun, which is counterproductive. So just want to leave her for last usually, and if you can just stun her and keep her stun locked, she's not much of a problem, at least not at this level. I'm wondering what Gear 13 is going to do with that. Clash from the Scoundrel Discord is doing some really interesting things with L3, and I'm actually intending to take her to Gear 13 here pretty soon myself, so look forward to that. I'm a little bit nervous, to be honest, but looking in the next zone, my opponent had Separatists, and the Nute team did not look that scary. The Grievous team looked a little strange. There's a random 5-star probe droid back there, and it's just kind of a strange thing. So first I needed to clear this next zone. I needed to clear those Geonosians without using Traya, because I needed Traya for other squads in the back, potentially, because Traya counters more things in the current meta than CLS. Commander Luke is a wonderful team. They counter a ton of squads. They're wonderful on offense. You should give them a try. I know that I used them a little too much on defense in the last Grand Arena, and I'm trying to rectify that. So this is actually a really important setup here. You need to be able to stun the Brood Alpha very first with Han's shot, and then you want to do buff immunity on the Brood Alpha, because you want his taunt to go away. He is a really great tank, and you want to be doing damage to people with less armor. And usually my target for this is SWGOH Soldier, and even though it's a Relic 2 Geonosian soldier, I decided that I would just still try to take him out because he was still kind of the lowest possible. I was able to stun him, so I went after Poggle. Poggle is another target you really want to stun right away, because if you can stun him, he is going to he's not going to be able to dispel anything. And the Brood Alpha and Poggle together are the ones who can stun, or rather cleanse, and you don't want them to cleanse. You want them to stay in their hibernation, or whatever you want to call what they do. They're bugs, no one cares. So anyways, I was able to get 58 banners here. That's a pretty good score. I mean, a Traya squad with only 3 members would probably get this score if none of them died, and that was a Relic 7 Geonosian Brood Alpha, and I was not really willing to take the chance of that happening, and so I decided to take CLS, as I said. Now, the use of Commander Luke kind of threw a hitch in my plans a little bit, because I needed R2 for that squad, and really now that I have a bunch of relics on the Luke squad, maybe I can kind of ease up on using R2. Like, I didn't really need him in that match, but if you have lower tier CLS squads, you definitely absolutely need R2 in there. So I took L3 here with Jedi Training Ray just because the extra droid gives BB-8 extra turn meter, which means the BB-8 has higher speed, and my opponent had put a reasonable degree of speed on their First Order team, and I wanted to make sure that I went first. And so the very first thing that I did was push First Order officers turn meter back and try to daze him. It didn't necessarily work the way I wanted it to. Really, I love to have R2 on this squad because of all of his stuns and his ability to help control. I especially like that he's able to put smoke on everyone and just give BB-8 the taunt, so to speak, and that didn't work this time, obviously, because I didn't have R2, and L3 doesn't really do much other than give turn meter and provide tanking services, which is fine, I suppose. But in the long term, you want R2 on that squad. You really do. But it's nice to have a replacement at least. What you want is a droid. You want a droid on this team that is, not just BB-8. And so you always want to take out First Order officer first if you can, because he's squishy and he is one of the multiple engines that this team has, and you just want to make sure that he gets a swift kick to the junk as quickly as possible. And now you see that KRU is all alone here. My goal here is to really spread out my attacks and keep him alive until my Finn is able to take one more turn to get his awesome health and protection revive up. And so I'm taking a lot of just basic attacks, and it was just enough to get everyone up. Unfortunately, he does not heal L3 because she's not resistance, but in the end, 59 banners, I find that acceptable, and I was able to actually clear both front zones and only drop 3 banners, which is really important if you can do that with all of the scrub teams, because nowadays, especially with relics, it's going to be really hard to clear your opponent's backline without losing banners, as you will see shortly. After an extended bout of chasing my children around and trying to make them go to bed, I came back to my opponent having attacked my first zone, and they had not failed, but they did fail against my Qi'ra Nest team. Nest apparently beat an Emperor Palpatine team, and according to my opponent, woohoo, I believe. And so I had a little bit of slack. It was great. I felt bad for my opponent because that's how I lost in my last match. Well, that was part of the problem anyways. And I was obviously just going to take it anyways, because feeling bad for someone is a good way to lose games really fast. And I did commiserate though. In the back, my opponent had really stacked their defense. They had Padme, they had Nightsisters, they had General Grievous, and a random Nute team, which looked annoying. And so I actually spent a little bit of time on my arena shard, just hitting a few people to get into position to hit the one person who's currently running Padme at a high level, and I practiced a little bit. I was able to get a pretty unconvincing win against my arena opponent's team, but they did have Grandmaster Yoda on it. They had all their arena mods. My opponent here had very good mods on the team, but they did not have their arena mods. They were probably still on Darth Revan's team, I'm assuming, because that's their arena team. And with Snips there, unfortunately for her and for that team, apparently she's not as good as Grandmaster Yoda, so I was able to beat that team relatively easily, drop 5 banners, and that's just fine. That team was really stressing me out. I was actually considering using Traya there, but I decided that what I really wanted to do was use Traya against that squad that had Nute and Nest in it, because I still had a little bit of shell shock from my encounter with Nest last time, and honestly guys, that's just fine. I mean, people talk about facing their fears, and that is well and good and wonderful, and sometimes you just have to do it. But if you can afford yourself the luxury of not having to face that team with the same team that you lost with before, or facing it with a less than ideal team, just do it. Like, I think that's good business. So you can see here I took my Padme team with Ahsoka, or it did have Ahsoka, but it also had Barriss, because I had used C-3PO with Commander Luke, and that's happening more and more lately, taking Barriss. I'm interested to see, I keep seeing variants of people using Shaak Ti on this team, and right now Shaak Ti is my clone lead, so that isn't necessarily an option, but once Shaak Ti gets replaced by whatever nonsense CG is going to inflict on us, I'm going to most likely lose Shaak Ti as one of the members. She could very well just be one of the members and not the lead, but we'll see. She might end up on the Padme team though instead. And anyways, this match was going to be a little more tricky. My opponent had not modded his Nightsisters to have a huge amount of offense, which even with all the different tiers they were upgraded, they weren't really up to doing a huge amount of damage, unfortunately for them, and fortunately for me though. And you can see actually on the bottom of the screen, my opponent was messaging me back. I had sent him a message, and I was prepared to just totally roast him on this episode with if he didn't respond, but he did, and turned out to be a really, really nice guy. I'm saying guy, I have no idea, but regardless, they were a very nice person, and I'm really glad that I was able to discuss things with them, because they were able to tell me what teams they used. And you can see on the bottom, like, they used Zeta Palpatine team against the Nest team and lost. So moving on to the Padme encounter here, like, I'm not convinced that Padme is going to always be the Nightsisters counter. Like, she's great and all, but you need to also have matching gear, and I keep finding people are really starting to ramp up the gear and relics on Nightsisters, and Nightsisters are doing some completely ridiculous damage. I don't know how that's going to scale long term in this game, if all of those relics are going to make it a mismatch in one direction or another. And plus, I almost think that Padme is going to be another really strong meta team. I mean, she's already strong, but I think she's going to get stronger. That's my prediction anyways. So the last team that I thought was any threat at all to me was this droid team with General Grievous. And so I took my standard Bastila with as the leader, just because she adds all that tenacity and all that extra protection. And since this round had begun, I had actually gotten Gear 13 on Grandmaster Yoda, I had gotten it on Jolee, and on Jedi Revan, and so I had a pretty high degree of gear here, and that was exciting because this General Grievous team was really strong. General Grievous specifically, because General Grievous had Relic 7 on him, and that, if you don't know, that's kind of a big deal. He's doing a huge amount of damage, and even though my opponent hadn't actually modded him to have maximum health, he still had a health pool of like 135, 140,000, which is more than any General Grievous I'd faced up to date. So I was excited to have my Gear 13 team here, and you can see that despite Gear 13, Jedi Knight Revan is still extremely squishy, and he went down, and luckily I had Jolee, and Jolee is made of sterner stuff than even Revan apparently, so we were able to get him revived. And here's kind of an interesting situation. Like, you really want to be able to mark Grievous at this point and not kill yet another droid, but Revan had died, and so it took a while to revive him, and so his turn meter was all messed up, or his turn order rather, and so you wanted to be able to avoid one more General Grievous crazy AoE that would just ruin my entire day. But luckily he did not kill all of my characters in one hit. Grandmaster Yoda is looking a little bit sad, and otherwise we just need to finish Grievous off as soon as possible. I'm trying to get more health and protection loaded back onto this team, but at this point it's like my opponent had failed an attack against me. I could spare the banners, and I just wanted to get out of this match alive. I think that it's going to be a really difficult match moving forward against these tier 7 relic madness General Grievous teams, especially when they start being supported by a bunch of higher relic droids. But 56 banners is very acceptable against this team. However, I am starting to drop quite a few banners, and luckily for me, I thought I could go into this last round and use my Traya team and maybe get some points back or something. I thought that it would kind of just be a laid back sort of match, and I even went undersized because I needed that undersized win, and I still needed like 5 undersized wins to get that final step. And so this was like the only opportunity that I really had. Maybe my CLS team could have done it, but uh, here is where the match just kind of gets annoying. I don't know if you've ever faced a truly fast Nute team, and I don't know that Nute is like truly fast. Probably not like in the plus 140 or more range, but he was very fast, and he kept putting extortion on my guys, and that is a huge problem. Like it's just, it keeps building and building, and with the Nute lead, it just keeps cycling to all your characters until Nute eventually gets his motivation ability and then lets all of his guys assist against you. But if you just pay him off and let him extort you, then it buffs their entire team. And it's just a really frustrating team to deal with, to be honest. So I put Isolate on Nest so that Nest would not be doing any kind of hits back, any kind of counters. And then I just focused my attention on other beings. The Droidica could do a huge amount of damage, and I was just kind of ignoring Jango. Jango was only gear 11, and that's really kind of a mistake. He's actually a really, really hard hitter on this team, and Nute, it has such a really interesting kit, to be honest. He's got a lot of really interesting things going on with him, just because he's buffing his entire team's offense with his extortion ability, and it really starts taking its toll. If all of your guys either are being assisted on by the entire team, or you're paying them off and they're getting the buff on the whole team. And Jango is just loving it. He's just kind of soaking it in, and it's not awesome. It is the opposite of awesome. It's making me really sad, to be honest, because all of my guys are just continually getting extorted, and I don't really doubt that all these Sith Lords have done something to be extorted, but it's bumming me out because I can't use them to their greatest effect, and I'm just paying them out. The awesome thing is, at some point I maxed out on my extortion, and so I could just pay it off, and the Separatists wouldn't actually benefit from anything. And here you see that Traya just gets completely nuked by Jango. It was kind of a transcendent, awesome moment, and I was kind of just shell-shocked. My Thrawn had gotten taken out. He's a little bit squishy anyways, but then the Traya just like disappeared. She was full health, and then she just died. And so maybe shell-shocked isn't quite the right word, but in the end, like, this Nute team was way more of a hassle than I thought it would be. I really genuinely thought that it was going to be a lot easier than it actually ended up being, and so I actually dropped the most banners against any team against this random Nute squad, and I'm very impressed by it. I'm going to have to look into it more. But as it stood, I was able to get the full clear. I think that my opponent at this point could not really mathematically win. Like, I think maybe mathematically they could win, but they would have to average something like 62.5 banners against each of my teams, and they did manage to take out the Nightsisters squad with an undersized Darth Revan team. And after that, though, things got a little bit sketchy for my opponent. They failed an attack against Grievous. This was with their Jedi Knight Revan team. They only managed to kill Magna Guard, which was great news for me, obviously. And in the end, they were able to kill. They one-shot my clones, but then they were unable to deal with my bounty hunters. And so, like, reviewing all of my defenses here, you can see that Qi'ra got a win, which she's getting less and less of those lately, but she still gets them every once in a while, obviously. I did actually manage to take a few points off of my opponent's banner total with the Dooku Wampa team, and really the huge moneymaker here was Grievous. He got 5 defends before he was finally dragged down by a kind of hodgepodge of random characters that my opponent had left, and my Jango team lost Embo of all guys, but that's a little too late. And once again, putting Jango Fett down with all the bounty hunters without messing with their speed at all ended up working out for me. and they ended up being the only man standing once again. And so I was able to get the win off of an opponent who had a really strong roster, had better mods than me, and significantly stronger relics, which relics are the most relevant piece in the game right now. So that was a little bit stressful, but I was really happy to get the win. I don't want to lose 2 in a row. I haven't done that yet so far in Grand Arena, knock on wood. But I did not want to make sure that this was the first time that actually happened. And so it was that I was able to get the win here. I need one more win to guarantee entrance into Kyber League, and I think maybe I can actually get it off of feats even if I don't win, but I'm not going to go into the match thinking or trying to lose or anything like that. I'm going to absolutely try to win, and we'll see how highly placed we can get into Kyber. My guess is going to be the scrub zone once again, the sub 200s, but Kyber League is Kyber League. That's the goal. So anyways, guys, I really, really appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for all of your support. It's been so crazy seeing how many views I've had lately, and I never really thought that I was going to be able to get even this far, even though I'm not like super far in terms of overall YouTuber success or whatever, but I've been really enjoying myself. So thank you guys so much once again, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.